The scent of expensive sandalwood, iron, and gunpowder was the first thing Chloe noticed. The second was the heavy, muscular arm draped over her waist. She had fallen asleep, a tired caterer in a dark room. She woke up as the undisputed queen of Chicago's deadliest syndicate. Chloe Jenkins was entirely too exhausted to care about the creeping shadows of the sprawling Romano estate. At 32, she was a fiercely independent woman, the proud owner of a high-end catering company, and she carried her plus-size figure with an unapologetic grace. Her soft, abundant curves were a testament to her lifelong love of culinary arts. But tonight, every inch of her body ached. She had just spent 18 consecutive hours managing the kitchen for an opulent 300-guest masquerade gala. The client was some mysterious, notoriously private billionaire whose staff paid entirely in crisp, unmarked $100 bills. Chloe didn't ask questions. In her line of work, discretion paid the bills. By 3:00 a.m., the last of the guests had vanished into the humid summer night. A sudden, violent thunderstorm had rolled off Lake Michigan, lashing against the mansion's stained glass windows and knocking out the main power grid. The estate was plunged into a suffocating darkness, illuminated only by the jagged flashes of lightning. Mrs. Higgins, the frantic and severely overworked head of the estate's staff, had found Chloe leaning heavily against a marble counter in the kitchen, massaging her swollen ankles. "The roads are flooded, Miss Jenkins," Mrs. Higgins had said, her flashlight beam trembling in her hand. "You cannot drive back to the city in this. Take the servants' staircase to the second floor. Head down the East Wing corridor. There is a row of guest rooms. Take the third door on the left. The sheets are clean. Sleep. We will sort out your payment in the morning." Chloe had nodded, too tired to form a coherent sentence of gratitude. She took the small emergency flashlight offered to her and began the long ascent. However, in the labyrinthine darkness of the mansion, disorientation quickly took hold. She missed the subtle turn for the East Wing, her exhausted mind guiding her heavy, aching legs down the West Wing, a strictly forbidden sector of the house. She counted the doors. 1, 2, 3. She pushed open the heavy oak door on the left. The room was cavernous, smelling faintly of rich tobacco, cedar, and something sharply masculine. Chloe didn't care. She kicked off her flour-dusted, non-slip shoes with a groan of profound relief. She didn't bother undressing, simply stripping off her catering apron and leaving it on the floor. She climbed into the center of the most massive bed she had ever encountered. The mattress was incredibly supportive, the sheets spun from cold, heavy silk. Within seconds, her exhausted body surrendered to the darkness, her deep, steady breathing harmonizing with the rolling thunder outside. An hour later, Leonardo Romano came home. Leonardo was not a mere billionaire. He was the Don of the Romano family, the apex predator of the Chicago underworld. And tonight, he had narrowly survived an orchestrated coup. His tailored Brioni suit was ruined, torn at the shoulder, where a bullet had grazed him, and splattered with the blood of the men who had dared to cross him. His dark eyes were hollow, with a chilling, sociopathic calm, though his body was running on the last fumes of adrenaline. He dismissed his heavily armed security detail at the base of the grand staircase, wanting nothing more than the solitary sanctuary of his master suite. He didn't turn on the lights. He knew every inch of his home blindly. Shedding his ruined jacket, his shoulder holster, and his blood-stained shirt, Leonardo walked toward his bed. He pulled back the heavy duvet and collapsed onto the mattress. Instantly, he froze. The mattress dipped. There was a presence, a radiant, undeniable heat radiating from the center of the bed. Leonardo's hand shot out, his instincts screaming, his fingers hovering inches from the backup combat knife he kept in the nightstand. But there was no attack. There was only a soft, quiet sigh, as his eyes adjusted to the gloom, aided by a flash of lightning. Leonardo saw her. A woman. She was not the typical razor-thin socialites or hardened assassins he was accustomed to. She was large, lush, and undeniably soft, curled comfortably on her side, taking up a significant portion of his bed. Her face was peaceful, her chest rising and falling in a deep, rhythmic slumber. She smelled of vanilla extract, cinnamon, and rain. Leonardo's hand slowly retracted from the knife. His mind, usually a steel trap of paranoia and strategic calculation, faltered. A hit woman wouldn't be dead to the world in his bed. A spy wouldn't smell like a bakery. The sheer absurdity of the situation warred with his crushing fatigue. The bleeding from his shoulder had stopped, but the throbbing ache demanded rest. He could wake her. He could drag her to the dungeons. He could call his men to interrogate her. Instead, the ruthless Mafia boss did something entirely out of character. Seduced by the bizarre, comforting warmth radiating from the stranger, Leonardo shifted slightly, closed his eyes, and let the storm outside mask the sound of his own heavy breathing. For the first time in 10 years, Leonardo Romano slept soundly, anchored by the unexpected, soft presence in his bed. Sunlight, brutal and unyielding, pierced the heavy velvet curtains, striking Chloe directly in the eyes. She groaned, stretching her arms above her head, her joints popping in satisfying succession. For a fleeting second, she marveled at how incredible she felt. Then her hand brushed against something rock-hard and distinctly warm. Chloe's eyes snapped open. Less than 2 feet away lay a man. He was sleeping on his back, the sheet pooled around his waist. His torso was a canvas of terrifying, intricate tattoos and jagged, faded scars. A fresh, angry red graze marked his left shoulder. I was devastatingly handsome, with sharp, aristocratic features and a dark, shadow-dusted jawline, but his aura practically screamed violence. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded Chloe's veins. Where am I? Who is this? She held her breath, slowly inching toward the edge of the mattress, praying to whatever higher power was listening that the silk sheets wouldn't rustle. She swung her thick legs over the side, her toes brushing the thick Persian rug. If you run, my guards will shoot you before you reach the staircase. The voice was a low, gravelly baritone that sent a violent shiver down her spine. Chloe froze, slowly turning her head over her shoulder. Leonardo's dark, predatory eyes were open, fixed squarely on her. He didn't look startled. He looked amused, calculating, and entirely in control. I can explain, Chloe stammered, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. I'm the caterer. Mrs. Higgins told me to sleep in the East Wing. I got lost in the dark. I didn't know this was your room. Please, just let me get my shoes and I'll leave. Leonardo propped himself up on one elbow, studying her. He took in her flushed, terrified face the way her soft curves trembled slightly under her simple cotton blouse, the absolute, undeniable innocence in her wide brown eyes. She wasn't a threat. She was a monumental, hilarious accident. Before Leonardo could formulate a response, the heavy oak doors of his bedroom burst open without a knock. "Leonardo, the docks are compromised!" 3 men stormed into the room. Leading the pack was Vincent Romano, Leonardo's uncle and his most dangerous internal rival. Vincent was flanked by Dante Rossi, the family underboss, and a heavily armed bodyguard. Vincent's face was twisted in a snarl of righteous fury, ready to berate his nephew for the chaos of the previous night. The 3 men stopped dead in their tracks, the oxygen instantly sucking out of the massive room. Their eyes darted from Leonardo, bare-chested and wounded, to Chloe, a plus-size caterer sitting on the edge of the Don's private bed, looking like a deer caught in the headlights of a freight train. In the brutal, misogynistic world of the Cosa Nostra, a Don's bedroom was a sacred sanctuary. No woman entered unless she was a permanent fixture, a queen. Vincent's lip curled into a sneer of disgust. "What is the meaning of this? While our men are bleeding in the streets, you are harboring some oversized kitchen wench." Chloe flinched, the cruel insult stinging, but her fear kept her glued to the mattress. Leonardo's eyes darkened, the brief amusement vanishing, replaced by a terrifying, lethal coldness. He looked at his uncle, realizing the political precipice he was standing on. Vincent had been aggressively pushing for Leonardo to marry Camilla Falcone, the sociopathic daughter of a rival family, to secure peace. If Leonardo showed weakness now, if he admitted a random woman had wandered into his bed while his security was breached, Vincent would use it to declare him unfit to rule. Leonardo needed an alibi. He needed a shield, and he needed to put his uncle in his place. Without breaking eye contact with Vincent, Leonardo shifted across the bed. He reached out. His large, calloused hand wrapping securely around Chloe's thick waist, and pulled her firmly against his bare side. Chloe gasped, her body stiffening as she was pressed against his solid, scarred chest. "Watch your tone, uncle," Leonardo commanded, his voice dripping with venomous authority. "You are speaking to my fiancé." A pin-drop silence fell over the room. Chloe's brain flatlined. Dante's jaw practically unhinged, and Vincent took a staggering step back, his face turning an apoplectic shade of purple. "Fiancé?" Vincent sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at Chloe. "You expect me to believe this nobody is the future queen of the Romano family, over Camilla Falcone?" "I expect you to show respect," Leonardo growled, his grip on Chloe's waist tightening protectively. "She is the reason I survived last night. She is mine. And in this house, what is mine is sacred." He turned his piercing gaze to Dante and the bodyguard. "Are we clear?" Dante, ever the loyal soldier, immediately recognized the shift in power. He swallowed hard, stepped forward, and did the unthinkable. He bowed his head deeply to Chloe. "My apologies, Donna Romano. It is an honor." The bodyguard immediately followed suit, dropping his gaze to the floor. Vincent, vibrating with rage and outplayed in his own game of dominance, realized he was outnumbered. With a venomous glare at Chloe, he stiffly inclined his head. Chloe sat paralyzed, pinned to the side of the most dangerous man in the city, watching as the ruthless Mafia elite bowed to her. She hadn't just slept in the wrong bed. She had just woken up in the middle of a war. The dangerous game had only just begun for Chloe, thrust from a quiet life of baking into a world of bullets, betrayal, and a billionaire boss who might just be using her, or falling for her? Will she survive the Romano family's deadly politics, or will her accidental night cost her everything? If you loved this intense Mafia romance, hit that like button, share this story with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for Part 3 and Part 4. The scent of expensive sandalwood, iron, and gunpowder was the first thing Chloe noticed. The second was the heavy, muscular arm draped over her waist. She had fallen asleep, a tired caterer in a dark room. She woke up as the undisputed queen of Chicago's deadliest syndicate. The heavy oak doors clicked shut, plunging the master suite into a suffocating silence. The moment the lock engaged, the terrifying illusion shattered. Chloe scrambled violently backward across the massive mattress, tangling her legs in the heavy silk sheets until her back slammed against the tufted leather headboard. Her lungs heaved, fighting for air in a room that suddenly felt devoid of oxygen. Leonardo exhaled slowly. The lethal, commanding aura he had projected for his uncle dissolved, leaving behind a dangerously calm, calculative exhaustion. He winced slightly as he reached for a clean towel on the nightstand, pressing it against the weeping graze on his left shoulder. "Are you insane?" Chloe finally choked out, her voice a shrill whisper. She clutched a pillow to her chest, trying to hide her generous curves from his dark, analytical gaze. "Fiancé, do you realize what you just did? I run a catering company. I have a cat. I make a mean beef Wellington. I do not belong in a mafia war." Leonardo walked toward a heavy crystal decanter on a mahogany side table. He poured 2 fingers amber liquid, his broad, scarred back muscles flexing with the movement. "Drink this," he commanded, stepping back to the bed and offering her the glass. Chloe batted his hand away. "I don't want scotch. I want my shoes. I am walking out that door, getting into my Honda, and pretending this nightmare never happened." "If you walk out that door," Leonardo stated, his voice devoid of malice, but heavy with absolute certainty, "you will be dead before you reach the Eisenhower Expressway." The blood drained from Chloe's face. "You're threatening me?" "I am stating a geographical and political fact," Leonardo replied, taking the sip of scotch himself. "My Uncle Vincent has been trying to usurp my position for 3 years. Last night's attack was his orchestration, I am sure of it. He wanted me dead so he could force an alliance with the Falcone family in New York. When he walked in here and saw you, he saw a vulnerability. He saw a breach in my security. If I had admitted you were a lost caterer, he would have dragged you down to the cellar and tortured you to find out who hired you to bypass my guards." Chloe's stomach violently revolted. The reality of her situation came crashing down with the weight of a concrete block. "By claiming you as mine," Leonardo continued, his dark eyes locking onto hers, "I placed you under the absolute protection of the Don. To touch you now is an act of treason. But it also means Vincent will be watching your every move. If he suspects for a single second that our engagement is a farce, he will have his excuse to strike. You are trapped here, Chloe." "How do you know my name?" she whispered, terrified. "I run Chicago," Leonardo said simply. "I know everything." Tears pricked the corners of Chloe's eyes. She was a self-made woman who had fought tooth and nail against a society that constantly told her she was too big, too loud, too ambitious. She had built her life. Now it was being stolen by a man whose world operated on blood and bullets. "For how long?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling but finding a shred of its usual steel. "How long do I have to play the Mafia queen?" Leonardo tilted his head, genuinely surprised by her resilience. Most women would be hysterical by now. Until I can systematically dismantle Vincent's operation and eliminate him. A few weeks, a month at most. Chloe took a deep, shuddering breath. The panic was still there, a live wire in her chest, but her pragmatic survival instincts were kicking in. Fine. But we do this on my terms. I am not some submissive little doll you can keep locked in a tower. My catering business stays open. My staff gets paid. And you promise me, on whatever soul you have left, that I walk away clean when this is over. Leonardo stepped closer, leaning over the bed until his face was inches from hers. The scent of sandalwood and danger enveloped her. His gaze dropped momentarily to her full lips, then to the soft, rapid pulse at her throat. You have my word, Chloe. But understand this. Outside these doors, you are Donna Romano. You do not cower. You do not bow. If someone insults you, you break them. Can you do that? I've worked in commercial kitchens for 10 years, Chloe said, lifting her chin defiantly. I know how to handle predators. A slow, genuinely amused smile curved Leonardo's lips, transforming his face into something breathtakingly handsome. Good, because tonight we are having dinner with the Falcone family, and they will try to eat you alive. The rest of the day was a blur of frantic, high-stakes preparation. Leonardo's private security detail swept her apartment, feeding her cat and securing her business operations under the guise of an anonymous corporate buyout. Meanwhile, a team of hyper-discreet, terrified stylists from the Gold Coast were smuggled into the Romano estate. Chloe stood in front of a gilded floor-to-ceiling mirror, staring at a stranger. The stylists had dressed her in a custom, deep emerald silk gown that hugged every curve, dip, and soft swell of her body. For years, Chloe had hidden behind loose aprons and baggy sweaters, ashamed of the space she occupied. But this dress didn't hide her. It weaponized her figure. The rich green contrasted beautifully with her dark hair, which was swept up in an elegant, complex twist. Leonardo entered the dressing room just as the stylists scurried out. He wore a flawless midnight blue tuxedo that expertly concealed the bandage on his shoulder. He stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes traveled slowly from the hem of her gown to the plunging neckline, his jaw tightening. In his world, women starved themselves to look like porcelain dolls. Chloe was a feast. She was vibrant, lush, and unapologetically real. You look... Leonardo paused, clearing his throat as a strange, unfamiliar tightness gripped his chest. You look perfect. He walked up behind her, his large hands resting gently on her bare shoulders. The contrast of his dark, scarred skin against hers sent a jolt of electricity straight down her spine. He reached into his pocket and produced a velvet box. Inside rested a diamond ring so massive and brilliant, it looked like a weapon. As he slid the cold metal onto her trembling finger, Leonardo met her gaze in the mirror. Let them underestimate you, Chloe. It will be their fatal mistake. The private dining room at the Palmer House Hilton was a theater of war disguised as a 5-star dinner. The heavy mahogany table was laden with crystal, silver, and the thick, suffocating tension of 2 rival syndicates sizing each other up. At the head of the table sat Don Falcone, an aging, ruthless patriarch from New York. To his right sat his daughter, Camilla. Camilla was everything Chloe was not. Razor-thin, surgically enhanced to icy perfection, and wearing a diamond necklace that cost more than Chloe's entire catering company. Camilla had expected to be sitting beside Leonardo tonight. Instead, she was staring daggers at the plus-size woman occupying her intended throne. Vincent Romano sat to Leonardo's left, a smug, expectant smirk playing on his lips. He was waiting for Chloe to crack. He was waiting for her to reveal herself as an imposter. Leonardo sat close to Chloe, his hand resting possessively on her thigh beneath the tablecloth. The heat of his palm was a grounding anchor in the freezing room. "So, Chloe," Camilla purred, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness as she swirled her expensive Barolo wine. "Leonardo tells us nothing about your family. What exactly is your lineage? You don't look like you come from our circles." Camilla's eyes deliberately raked over Chloe's generous chest and wide hips, a cruel, mocking smile forming. "Or perhaps you just ate the competition." A tense silence fell. Vincent's smirk widened. Leonardo's grip on Chloe's thigh tightened, his muscles coiling to strike. He opened his mouth to verbally decapitate Camilla, but Chloe placed her hand over his, silencing him. Chloe picked up her wine glass, perfectly poised. She looked Camilla dead in the eye. "My lineage, Camilla, is built on survival and hard work, not inherited blood money and plastic surgery," Chloe said, her voice smooth and echoing with absolute confidence. "I build empires from scratch, and as for my appetite, I assure you, when I feast, I leave absolutely nothing on the bones. I would be careful if I were you. Some people are entirely too fragile to play at my table." Don Falcone let out a sudden, barking laugh, genuinely amused by the sharp retort. Camilla's face flushed a mottled, ugly red. Vincent's smirk vanished entirely. Leonardo leaned back in his chair, a look of profound, smoldering pride washing over his features. She wasn't just surviving. She was conquering. The heavy double doors opened, and a line of impeccably dressed waiters entered, carrying the main course. It was an elaborate braised veal in a dark, rich truffle reduction. The head waiter, a man with a slight tremor in his hands, placed the silver cloche down in front of Leonardo. As the waiter lifted the lid, a cloud of steam billowed out. Everyone at the table breathed in the rich, earthy scent of the truffles. But Chloe, a woman whose entire livelihood relied on a superhuman sense of smell and taste, froze. Beneath the heavy aroma of garlic, wine, and truffle, there was something distinctly sharp. It was incredibly faint, masked brilliantly by the complex sauce. But to a master chef, it was screaming like a siren. Bitter almonds. Chloe's heart slammed against her ribs. Cyanide. Leonardo picked up his silver fork, turning to continue his conversation with Don Falcone. He cut a piece of the veal, bringing it toward his mouth. "Leo, no!" Without thinking, Chloe lunged. She slapped the fork out of his hand. The silver utensil clattered violently against the crystal glasses, shattering a wine goblet and sending dark red liquid spilling across the pristine white tablecloth like blood. The entire room erupted. "What is the meaning of this?" Don Falcone roared, jumping to his feet. Camilla shrieked as the wine splattered her dress. Vincent shot up from his chair, pointing an accusing finger. "She's insane! She's attacking the Don!" Leonardo didn't look at his uncle or the Falcones. He looked only at Chloe, his eyes wide with shocked inquiry. "The sauce," Chloe gasped, her chest heaving as she pointed a shaking finger at the veal. "Bitter almonds. It's cyanide. The meat is poisoned." The head waiter, realizing his assassination attempt had just been foiled by a caterer's palate, panicked. He reached beneath his tailored vest, pulling out a silenced Glock 19. He didn't aim at Leonardo. He aimed at the woman who had ruined the plan. Time seemed to slow down. The waiter raised the barrel toward Chloe's chest, but Leonardo moved with a terrifying, predatory speed that defied human logic. He flipped the heavy mahogany dining table upward with one massive heave, creating a barricade just as the suppressed gun spit a bullet. The bullet splintered the wood inches from Chloe's head. Before the waiter could fire a second shot, Leonardo cleared the overturned table. He tackled the assassin to the floor, disarming him with a brutal, sickening crack of bone. Dante and the Romano security detail burst into the room, guns drawn, securing the perimeter. The Falcone guards were locked in a Mexican standoff with the Romanos. Leonardo knelt over the whimpering waiter, pulling a combat knife from his ankle sheath and pressing it against the man's throat. "Who gave the order?" Leonardo roared, his voice shaking the crystal chandeliers. The waiter, sobbing in pain, locked eyes with Vincent Romano. Vincent went pale. He slowly raised his hands, stepping backward toward the door. "Leo, listen to me. It's a misunderstanding." "Dante," Leonardo commanded, his voice turning to ice. "Take my uncle to the docks. I will deal with him personally tonight." As Dante dragged a screaming Vincent out of the room, Leonardo stood up. His suit was ruined again. I was breathing heavily, his dark eyes sweeping the chaotic room until they landed on Chloe. She was sitting on the floor behind the overturned table, her gorgeous emerald gown stained with wine, shaking violently. Leonardo ignored the Falcones. He ignored his guards. He walked through the broken glass and knelt in front of her. He gently cupped her face in his large, blood-stained hands. "You saved my life," he whispered, the sheer awe in his voice cracking his ruthless facade. "I'm a chef," Chloe choked out, a hysterical tear escaping her eye. "I know my sources." Leonardo let out a breathy laugh, pulling her firmly into his chest. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling the sweet, sane scent of vanilla and rain. In that moment, the fake engagement died. He didn't just need her to hold his throne. He needed her to keep his soul alive. He looked at her, his dark eyes blazing with a terrifying, permanent devotion. "You're not going anywhere, Chloe," he vowed softly. "You are my queen, and heaven help anyone who tries to take you from me." What started as a desperate mistake in the dark turned into a deadly game of survival, proving that true power isn't about bloodlines. It's about brains, courage, and a killer palate. Chloe didn't just survive the Mafia. She conquered its most dangerous boss. If you loved this intense, twist-filled romance and want more stories where fierce, curvy women run the show, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more.